50,000, 70,000. The numbers are so vast, they lose all meaning. They become just statistics of horror. In a single afternoon on August 2nd, 216 BC, Rome lost more men than on any other day in its 700-year history. An entire generation was wiped out. The legion, that invincible war machine that had conquered the Mediterranean, lay shattered, drowning in its own blood and humiliation. This isn't the story of a battle. It's the anatomy of an annihilation. It's the day when the all-powerful Republic of Rome, a civilization destined to rule the world, knelt down, bled out, and nearly died in the fields of Cannae. And it was all the work of one man, a man who had sworn as a child at a pagan altar eternal hatred for Rome. Hannibal Barca. The question that echoes through the centuries as the crows feast is not just how he did it, but whether this was the work of a monster, a butcher of men thirsty for vengeance, or the cold, perfect calculation of one of the greatest military geniuses the world has ever known. To understand the carnage, you have to understand the arrogance that provoked it. 2 years earlier, Hannibal had done the impossible, crossed the Alps in winter with an army of mercenaries and elephants, bringing war to the heart of Italy. Rome reeled, suffered 2 humiliating defeats at Trebia and Lake Trasimene. Panic gripped the city, but Rome doesn't know panic for long. It only knows fury. The Republic, wounded in its pride, decided to end the Carthaginian threat once and for all. They would no longer play defense, no longer just contain him. They would crush him. They assembled the largest army they had ever fielded, 8 full legions, 87,000 men. A tide of steel and discipline designed for one purpose: to erase Hannibal and his army from the face of the earth. Commanding this colossal force, as Roman law dictated, were 2 consuls. And here begins the tragedy. The first was Lucius Aemilius Paulus, a patrician veteran, cautious. He had already faced Hannibal's cunning and knew the Carthaginian was no ordinary barbarian. He was a predator. The second was Gaius Terentius, Varro, a plebeian, an ambitious and popular politician who had risen to power with one promise: no more waiting tactics, action, a decisive and glorious battle. Varro saw Hannibal and saw only an obstacle in his path to eternal glory. One saw a trap, the other saw opportunity. One preached prudence, the other demanded blood. Command alternated every day. One day, Paulus's caution held the army back. The next, Varro's arrogance hurled it forward, straight into the enemy's jaws. 2 men commanding a single army, 2 wills at war. They didn't know that Rome's greatest enemy was not Hannibal's army, but the division within its own command. And Hannibal, from a distance, watched them and smiled, because his plan depended not only on his soldiers but on Roman arrogance. It was designing a custom-made slaughterhouse, and Varro was about to cut the ribbon. The 2 most powerful forces in the Mediterranean eyed each other across the Aufidus River. On one side, the ordered fury of Rome, 87,000 men thirsty for a decisive victory. On the other, the desperate genius of Hannibal with barely 50,000 soldiers. A mix of mercenaries, Gauls, Iberians, and Libyans, exhausted after years of campaigning. On paper, it was a sure annihilation. The numbers don't lie. But Hannibal doesn't fight with numbers, he fights with the mind. He chooses the terrain. It's no accident. It's an open plain, perfect for his secret weapon, the best cavalry in the world. He knows that at dawn the sun will be at his back, shining directly into the legionaries' eyes. He knows that the southeast wind, the Vulturnus, will rise and hurl clouds of dust and sand into the Romans' faces, blinding them, choking them in the midst of combat. To every detail, every grain of sand is a weapon in his arsenal. But he has a problem. The Romans aren't obligated to fight here. Paulus, the cautious consul, knows it. He sees the plain and smells the trap. He advises waiting, retreating to more rugged terrain where Hannibal's cavalry would be useless. But Hannibal also knows his enemies. He knows Varro's impatience. He knows that for the trap to work, the mouse must want the cheese, so he gives. Hima reasoned. Sends his Numidian cavalry, ghostly riders mounted bareback, to harass the Roman water carriers. It's not an attack. It's a humiliation. A slap in the face of the world's most powerful army. The Numidians laugh, hurl their javelins, and withdraw before the heavy legions can react. For Paulus, the maneuver is obvious. It's bait, a childish provocation. But for Varro, it's an intolerable personal insult. In the consular tent, the Republic cracks. He's provoking us, argues Paulus. He wants us to fight on his terrain under his conditions. But Varro hears the voices of his soldiers clamoring for vengeance. He hears the echo of his own promises in Rome. He sees Paulus's caution, not as wisdom, but as cowardice. Your fear dishonors us, he shouts. Tomorrow command is mine, and tomorrow this war ends. And so the decision is made. Paulus, with a heavy heart, dons his armor. He knows where his colleagues' arrogance is leading them, but he is a Roman. His duty is to obey and fight, even in a battle he knows is lost. On the other side of the river, Hannibal sees the red standard. The bait has worked. Varro deploys his legions in a brutally simple formation. He seeks no subtleties. He tightens the ranks, creating a human hammer, a block of infantry denser and deeper than ever. His plan is simple. Advance in a straight line and crush the Carthaginian center through sheer mass and brute force. It's the essence of Roman tactics: order, discipline, and overwhelming power. It's logical, imposing, and exactly what Hannibal wants him to do. The legionaries advance. The ground trembles under their feet. They see Hannibal's army, a ridiculously thin and weak line in the center, composed of the less disciplined Gallic and Iberian warriors. It looks like suicide, a beginner's mistake. The Roman centurions smile. Victory is there, right in the center. You just have to take it. They don't see the trap. They only see the bait, the clash. 80,000 men against 50,000. The roar is so great that it's said to have made birds nest away. The Roman line, that hammer of 87,000 souls, strikes the Carthaginian center with the force of an earthquake. And just as Hannibal had foreseen, his center, formed by his most expendable troops, the Gallic and Iberian mercenaries, begins to give way. For the legionary in the front line, it's exactly what they've been promised. The barbarians can't withstand Roman discipline. They push, gain ground. The Gauls, with their naked torsos and raw cries, fall before the methodical advance of Roman steel. The Romans shout in euphoria. Victory? The enemy center is breaking. Varro, watching from the rear, must have tasted glory on his lips. His plan. The simple and brutal plan of brute force was working perfectly. But it wasn't breaking. It was bending. Hannibal himself is in the center with his brother Mago, shouting orders, holding the retreat, ensuring it's a controlled fallback, not a rout. He's deliberately yielding ground, drawing more and more Romans into the depths of his formation. Every step the Romans take toward victory is a step deeper into the trap. They're so focused on the front, so blinded by dust, sun, and blood, that they don't see what's happening on the flanks. And on the flanks, the true hell is unfolding. On one flank, Hasdrubal, commanding the heavy cavalry, doesn't maneuver. He executes. He charges with unheard-of violence and simply wipes the Roman cavalry off the map. There's no prolonged fight. It's a massacre. Meanwhile, on the other end of the field, the Numidian cavalry does something much more subtle. They don't charge. They harass, hurl their javelins, feign attacks, vanish. Their goal isn't to destroy. It's to pin down, to keep Paulus's cavalry occupied, preventing them from aiding the center. Paull, US fights valiantly, but he's paralyzed, trapped in a duel he can't win. He's already been wounded by a slingshot stone, but he refuses to leave. The field, he sees what's happening, feels the cold steel of the trap, but he can do nothing to stop it. And here occurs the moment that seals Rome's fate. In any other battle, the victorious cavalry would have pursued the fleeing enemy in search of personal glory. But Hannibal's army isn't like any other. Hasdrubal wheels around, leads his riders behind the legions, still advancing blindly in the center, and falls like lightning on Paulus's cavalry, already engaged with the Numidians. Attacked from the front and rear, Rome's last Circemer exterminated. Hannibal's sky is now clear of all threats. The legionaries in the center howl in triumph, believing the battle is won. They can't hear over their own shouts the gallop of horses at their backs. Don't see the shadow looming over them. The slaughterhouse door has just closed, with them inside. For an instant, in the heart of the chaos, there's an almost perfect silence. It's the silence of disbelief, the moment when the predator has closed all escape routes and the prey realizes there's nowhere to run. The legionaries in the rear are the first to feel the tremor of the earth, the guttural war cry of Hasdrubal's cavalry charging straight at their backs. Panic is a wave that sweeps through the formation from back to front, but Hannibal's trap is a diabolical work of art. It doesn't have just two jaws. It has four. While the cavalry seals the rear, Hannibal gives the final order, and the deadliest pieces on his board, which have remained motionless until now, come into play. His African infantry, his best men, the elite troops he'd kept in reserve at the ends of his line. Armed with equipment captured from the Romans themselves in previous battles, they execute the maneuver with chilling precision. They wheel inward and charge the exposed and disorganized flanks of the Roman legions. Surprise is total. The legionaries, expecting enemies only from the front, are now stabbed from the left, from the right, from the rear, attacked from the front, from behind, from the flanks. Suddenly, the Roman army ceases to be an army. It becomes a mass of 80,000 men trapped in a shrinking box of death. Their greatest advantage, their numbers, has become their death sentence. They're so packed together that they can't raise their arms to use their swords. They can't maneuver their shields. The men in the center of the formation don't even die by Carthaginian blade. They die suffocated, crushed by the pressure of their own terrified comrades. Discipline, the soul of the legion, evaporates. Order turns to chaos. The formation dissolves into a sea of terrified individuals fighting for their own survival. And in the midst of the carnage, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, the consul who saw the disaster coming, fights to the end. Wounded, surrounded, he refuses to flee. A tribune offers him his horse. Paulus refuses. Go and tell the Senate to fortify Rome, he says, with blood bubbling from his lips. I will die here, so as not to be accused again, to accuse my colleague, to defend my innocence. And he disappears, swallowed by the tide of death and Vero. The architect of the catastrophe flees with a handful of horsemen, abandons the field, abandons his men, abandons his honor, galloping to save his own life, while the army he led to glory drowns in blood because of him. The Battle of Cannae is over. It lasts barely a few hours, but what begins in that moment is something much darker. It's no longer a fight, it's a harvest of men. And Hannibal, the farmer of death, is about to reap his crop. For Hannibal's veterans, this is no longer a battle. It's a job. They form a perfect perimeter around the trapped human mass. No suicidal charges, no heroic duels. It's a production line of death. The first row of Romans is annihilated. They step forward. The second row is annihilated. They take another step. It's methodical, relentless, industrial, for the men trapped. Inside, it's hell on earth, a hell from which there's no escape. The only direction is forward, toward the swords awaiting you. The air becomes toxic, thick with the smell of blood, sweat, and death. The war cries have been replaced by the moans of the dying and pleas to the gods. The will to fight fades, replaced by the primal instinct to survive, an instinct that's useless. Desperation leads to madness. Some take their own lives before the enemy can. Others, in a final act of defiance, simply cover their heads and wait for the blow. History records that some legionaries were found dead afterward, with their heads buried in the earth. Having suffocated themselves in the dust to escape, the horror, the collapse, isn't just physical. It's the collapse of the human soul. For 8 hours, the slaughter continues without cease. As evening falls, the work is done. The field of Cannae is a tapestry of carnage. 50,000, perhaps 70,000 bodies lie in an area of just a few square kilometers. Thousands of gold rings are recovered from the fingers of fallen senators and equities. The elite of Rome. The river is clogged with corpses. Hannibal has lost barely 6,000 men, most of them the Gauls he used as bait. It's the most perfect and most terrible tactical victory in history. The victory is total, absolute. The army that was supposed to destroy him no longer exists. The road to the city of Rome, just 250 miles away, is open and undefended. Hannibal, the cavalry genius, falls to his knees before his general. "Don't waste time, Hannibal," he pleads. "Send me with the cavalry right now. Follow me with the infantry. In 5 days you will dine on the Capitoline." The entire war, his father's oath, the crossing of the Alps, the suffering, the blood, all led to this precise moment, the opportunity to bring his hated enemy to its knees. The logic of war demanded one course of action: march on Rome. But Hannibal, the man who had never hesitated on the battlefield, hesitated. History is full of crucial moments, hinges on which destiny turns. And this one, on a blood-soaked field. In southern Italy is one of them. Hannibal, frustrated, finally stands. His words will echo through eternity, the most famous accusation ever made against a genius. "Oh, how to win a victory, Hannibal," he says bitterly, "but you do not know how to use it." He walks away, leaving the conqueror alone with his thoughts. Was it a mistake? The greatest miscalculation in history? From a distance, it seems like madness not to march on the capital, but Hannibal's mind doesn't work like other men's. He sees the whole board. His army is exhausted. His best men have survived, but they're wounded. And most importantly, he has no siege engines. Rome isn't an open city. It's the greatest fortress in the ancient world. Attacking it head-on would be suicide, a bloody assault that could cost him the army he has left. Hannibal isn't a gambler. He's a calculator. His plan was never to destroy the city of Rome. His goal was to dismantle its power, isolate it, tear its Italian allies from its side, proving that the Roman wolf could bleed. While Hannibal calculates, news of the annihilation reaches Rome. It doesn't arrive as an official report. It comes as a poisonous rumor, brought by the few terrified survivors, including Varro himself. At first, there's disbelief. It's impossible. No Roman army has ever been wiped out. But as more refugees arrive, the truth falls on the city like a plague. The spirit of Rome breaks. The mourning is so deep and universal that there isn't a single house that hasn't lost a father, a son, a brother. Panic is absolute. Hannibal is at the gates. The city falls into superstition and terror. Desperate, rites are performed. The Sibylline books are consulted. In the darkest act of their desperation, the Roman state resorts to the unthinkable, human sacrifice. 2 Gauls and 2 Greeks are buried alive in the Forum, a blood offering to gods who seem to have abandoned them. And in Rome's darkest hour, when the city threatens to devour itself, one man rises to stem the tide. Quintus Fabius Maximus, the man nicknamed Conctator, the Delayer. The same man whose tactics of avoiding battle had been ridiculed by Varro and the people, now is calm as the only anchor in an ocean of hysteria. Fabius offers no false hopes, no inspiring speeches. He offers order. He declares martial law. Forbids public mourning to stop the spiral of panic. He posts sentinels at the gates with orders to let no one out. He transforms the city into a fortress not just of stone, but of will. While Hannibal expected his victory to provoke political collapse, Rome, under Fabius's iron hand, does the opposite. It hardens. Hannibal, still in his camp, sends a delegation to Rome. Not to demand unconditional surrender, but to negotiate peace and the ransom of the thousands of prisoners taken at Cannae. Expects to find a city on its knees, ready to accept the end of the war. But what his envoys find is not fear. It's a wall of defiance. The Senate's response, led by Fabius's spirit, is brutal, unanimous. And a harbinger of the decade of blood to come, Rome does not negotiate with an enemy while he treads Italian soil. The prisoners are abandoned to their fate. Rome's brutal refusal to negotiate doesn't stop Hannibal's plan. On the contrary, at first, it seems to accelerate it. Terrified by the giant's fall or resentful after decades of domination, the cities of southern Italy begin to abandon Rome. Capua, the second richest and most powerful city on the peninsula, opens its gates to him. Hannibal finally has a base, allies, a place where his veterans can rest. For a moment it seems he has one. He's the master of Italy, but Rome has learned the bloodiest lesson in its history. It will no longer send its sons to Hannibal's meat grinder. Under Fabius's guidance, the Republic adopts the strategy it once despised. It's a war of shadows, a war of frustration. The Roman legions, now smaller and more agile, follow Hannibal everywhere like wolves, stopping. They cling to the highlands where Hannibal's cavalry is useless. They offer no battle. Never. They attack his supply lines, burn his crops, ambush his scouts. It's a war of 1,000 cuts, designed to bleed him slowly. Hannibal, the master of the decisive battle, finds himself in a maddening position. He's the strongest man in the world, but no one wants to fight him. He marches from one end of Italy to the other, challenging the Romans to come out, but they refuse. He's a king without a kingdom, a conqueror with nothing to conquer. And while he's trapped in this deadly game of cat and mouse, Rome does the unthinkable. Instead of cowering, it strikes with an audacity bordering on madness. Rome opens a second front, sends its best remaining legions not to fight Hannibal, but to Hispania, his base of operations, the source of his silver and men. In commanding this army is a young man of barely 25 years, a man whose father and uncle have just died at the hands of Hannibal's brother. His name is Publius Cornelius Scipio. He carries in his heart both Hannibal's genius and a hatred forged in family tragedy. Scipio doesn't fight like the old Roman generals. He has studied Hannibal, learned from him. Psychological warfare. In one bold stroke, he captures Carthago Nova, the heart of Carthaginian power in Hispania. While Hannibal is being slowly strangled in Italy, Scipio is cutting his roots at home. The strategic balance, almost imperceptibly, begins to tilt. Years pass. 10, 15. Hannibal remains undefeated on Italian soil. He wins every battle the Romans dare to offer. But they're hollow victories that change nothing. The men who cross the Alps with him are dying of old age or in senseless skirmishes. He's trapped. Knows time is running out. Rome, like a hydra, regenerates its armies. For every man it loses, it recruits 2 more. Hannibal can't. He needs a final blow. He needs help. He needs his brother. Then comes the news that changes everything. Hasdrubal Barca, his younger brother, has done the impossible. He is evaded. Scipio and Hispania gathered a new army and crossed the Alps, the hammer and the anvil. The 2 sons of Hamilcar, the 2 military geniuses of Carthage, are in Italy at the same time. If they can unite their armies, not even Rome's tenacity can resist. Hasdrubal sends a messenger to Hannibal to coordinate the meeting point. The entire war boils down to that message. But the gods or fate have chosen a side. The messenger is captured. The Romans now know everything.
The plan.
The route, the timing. They know Hannibal is in the south waiting, and they know Hasdrubal is in the north. Marching blindly into a trap, instead of waiting for the blow, Consul Gaius Claudius, Nero makes the riskiest decision of the entire war, a decision that could save Rome or destroy it completely. Disobeying the Senate's orders and the Republic's laws that forbade a consul from operating outside his assigned territory, he does the unthinkable. He leaves a small force to deceive Hannibal, making him believe the entire army is still there. And with his 7,000 best men, he embarks on a forced march of 300 miles to the north. It's a suicidal race. If Hannibal realizes the army left in the south will be annihilated, if they don't arrive in time, Hasdrubal will destroy the other consul. The entire war hangs on this knife's edge. After a week of infernal marching, Nero and his men arrive. At the northern camp in the dead of night, joining his colleague's army in secret. But the next morning Hasdrubal, a general as cunning as his brother, notices the details. The thinner horses, the armor covered in dust from a long journey, The trumpet call that announces the presence of a second consul, panic seizes him. The message was intercepted. He knows Hannibal isn't coming. He knows he now faces Rome's combined force. He knows he's lost. He tries to retreat, but it's too late. The Romans fall upon him with the fury of a republic fighting for its existence. The Battle of the Metaurus isn't a tactical masterpiece like Cannae. It's a slaughter, a Cannae in reverse. Hasdrubal, seeing the cause is lost, refuses to be captured. He spurs his horse and charges straight into the heart of a Roman legion, fighting until he's brought down and killed. Carthage's last army in Italy is annihilated. Hannibal's last hope dies with his brother. Nero returns to the south with the same inhuman speed and delivers the message to Hannibal. Not with a scroll, but with an act of devastating psychological cruelty. He orders Hasdrubal's head cut off, preserves it, hurls it into the palisades of his brother's camp. Hannibal, the man who had slaughtered 70,000 Romans without flinching, collapses at the sight of his brother's head. "Now it's," said he whispered, with tears in his eyes, "I see at last the fate of Carthage. The final years are an inevitable conclusion. Carthage calls its best son to defend it." And so, in the year 202 BC, on the plains of Zama, the two titans meet face to face. Hannibal, the aged genius, with an improvised army against Scipio, his young and brilliant student, commanding Rome's veteran legions. The apprentice surpasses the master. Scipio uses Hannibal's own tactics against him, and for the first time in his life, the great Hannibal Barca is completely defeated. Hannibal won the greatest battle of all, but Rome won the war. Why? Because the secret of Rome's power lay not in its legions, but in its will. Hannibal inflicted a wound that would have killed any other empire. But Rome refused to die. Defeat didn't weaken it. It purified it. Cannae burned away its arrogance and forged in its place an iron determination that would lead it to conquer the known world. Rome's darkest day was not its end. It was its true beginning. Hannibal, in his attempt to destroy his enemy, unwittingly made it invincible.